Hi, this is Denise Matthew. I hope you're doing well. I'm back again for a full moon forecast, or what to look out for this next full moon that we're going to be having on February 16th, 2022. From an astrological perspective, this is a Leo full moon, which usually talks about big, bold, and even showy energy that sort of wants to be seen by the world around them. And one thing to keep in mind is that when I do talk about the transits, there will be potentially people that will be more impacted by the transits, much like in astrology, if certain planets are connecting with your natal planets. So that's something to keep in mind. But having said that, a lot of people might still feel this energy on the whole. So it truly is about how it affects you and personally diving into the energy, or potentially paying more attention when the full moon is happening, or even the days that are leading up to it and the days after. So for this full moon, we have the gates 29, the gates 30, the gates 60, the gates 3, the gate 54, and also the gate 32 being impacted. But again, your individual experience is the one key that works the best for how you feel through these transits. So let's get into the information. Something that's interesting to note is that right now the sun is going through what is called the fates. The fates are potentially those things that get in your way when you're trying to move ahead in life, or you're trying to do something and you think everything's laid out exactly as it's supposed to, but it doesn't actually work out that way, and something gets in your way. I've done a whole video on exactly how the fates work, the strategies that you can use, and they are connected to each profile line. So that's something to keep in mind, that certain profiles have different strategies of how to get through the energy of the fates, or to kind of continue on your way, even if life is pushing against you. When we have the sun in the gate 30 and the line 4, this is truly talking about the idea of burnout, because at some point you've gone to a pace that is unsustainable. You're moving too fast, you're doing too much, and it's getting to the point where you're starting to feel like you're potentially going to burn out because you just don't have the energy to keep up the pace that you've been going this whole time. And since we know that every full moon has an opposition, we always want to include that in what we're talking about when we're talking about the full moon. So that's why I wanted to talk about the sun being in the gate 30. Now, when we look where the moon is in the gate 29, line 4. Again, fourth line energy is an influential energy. It's also a fixed energy and very single-minded in how you approach things in your life. This is also called the line of the opportunist, or in other words, this is a place where all opportunities come from who you know. So for that reason, social groups are very important. When we look at the gate 29 in the line 4, this is called directness. And the nice part about this energy is if you combine the energy of the sun and the energy of the moon, because they're in opposition, and we do that for the whole mandala because every opposition, they all have some energy built in together so that they work together. So if we're looking at the burnout potential of the gate 30 line 4 and we look at the gate 29 line 4, that's directness, which is saying that find the easiest way to get where you want to go and make it easier for yourself rather than making it difficult. It's really talking about what is the simplest way for you to hold on to where you want to go in your life, to go to the place that you've been dreaming of, the goal that has been set in your mind. How do you get there in the easiest way possible so that you're preserving your strength, your energy, and you're not getting burnt out? And that's the key with this energy. So this full moon really is a culmination, as we know, with all full moons. And this is talking about this idea of having a deeper look at the goals, dreams, and the things that you've been working toward. Having a look at if they're still serving you. Is it something you still want to stride towards? Or is it something that no longer serves you, or you don't feel like you have the passion or the energy for it? Or has it become such an obsession that the only thing that you can think of is this particular goal and dream? And I do want to be clear that when I'm talking about the energy of the fates, this is a global perspective. So everybody can be affected by how this energy is working. It doesn't necessarily mean that you have to have a specific profile. So the generalized way to work with this energy is to do something before the proverbial bubble breaks, because at that point you're being reactive instead of proactive, and it's going to take more time to come back from burning out than it is to prevent yourself from actually getting to that point. So self-care, seeing where you are, protecting your health, and taking a break while you reconfigure and decide exactly where you're going, and trying to find the easiest way to get where you want to go. can serve you to navigate this energy so that you're getting the most out of it, so that you can actually get to the place where you want to go because you find the easiest route to the goal that you have in mind. And it's no mistake that the gate 30 is part of the cross of contagion, which is actually being transited during this full moon. And that is about this idea of things going viral, or this potential for burnout being almost contagious as well, or burning other people out because you were so intensely involved with your process that you can't see beyond your process. So the key is always going to be balance. And when you have balance in everything you're doing, then you're going to stay healthy. Everyone else around you is going to stay healthy, and you're going to be able to continue on your path in the healthiest version of you. A few other energies that are playing out within this full moon is we do have the nodes changing just before the full moon happens. And this is going from the 4th line to the 3rd line because they do go backward when they travel instead of going like the rest of the planets. So they go clockwise when the rest of the planets go counterclockwise. So we're moving from a 4th line theme, which is really about influence, fixed nature, opportunities, organizations and groups, and now we're moving into the 3rd line. Now the 3rd line is considered one of the most abundant lines of the whole body graph because this is where we can get the most material rewards, because there's a lot of adaptation, experimentation, and working with the energy to get the best for our buck, you could say. We could imagine that the energy of the nodes or the environment around us is suddenly becoming a little bit more lucrative. But what you also have to remember is that this is going to be a time where we're trying things that are potentially different than what we've done before, and there's potential for things not to go to plan. So as long as you can see that the way we are doing things may not necessarily be like we've always done it, so we're experimenting with different things, some parts of it will work the way we want to, but other parts won't necessarily work the way we want to. And what we get from it is this ability to learn from exactly how everything played out and adjust our strategy for the next time we venture out, you could say. When we move from the 4th line to the 3rd line, we also go from this idea of groups, community, and even friendships into this concept of being more introspective and sort of wanting to figure it out ourselves. The gate 8 is related to the role model and the type of thing that only we can give to the world, the voice of who we are out into the community or the collective, you could say. Now, when we get to the 3rd line, this is where we have this ability to dress for the part, but maybe not necessarily have the depth for what we're trying to deliver to the groups around us. So this might be where you want to make sure that you have all your I's dotted and your T's crossed, and that you have the look you're looking for. So in other words, you're going for a job interview, you look really nice, you've done yourself up, so you're all dressed perfectly and you're looking the part, and yet you get in the interview and you're not really prepared. So what this is saying is look good. Yes, if that's what you want to do, absolutely. But the other perspective is to always be prepared as well. The other side is the gate 14, and this is really getting into this idea of talent and how it can be used for the highest good of everyone. Now, there's a duality in all energies, and when we get to the 3rd line of the 14, it really is this ability to use what you can bring to the collective and do the best that you can for the collective in a selfless way. The other perspective is to do things for just you without regard to anybody else. So it all comes down to how we want to use our talent in the world. And some people will use it for the highest and the best, you could say, and some will use it just for what they can get in the long run. But in this perspective, when you are in the environment and you're seeing it all around you, it might be something that people might actually notice when you're just being self-involved and not really using it for the best of everyone else. And that is why, if possible, it's always good to have something where you're getting something as much as you're giving. And that's always the main plan. And that's how it works the best. So if you can have a balance like that, then it will work in your favor. Venus and Mars continue to sort of transit side by side, and they're going to be transiting in the gate 54 line 2. Now, gate 54 is all about ambition, and when you have the Mars and Venus in there, you do have the yin and the yang, so you do have some duality, some balance, you could say. Mars is actually in detriment in the second line. And this is talking about this idea of once you get that next step up in the ladder, anybody who's helped you, you don't actually care about them anymore. And you might even talk about them and say, oh, well, they were actually not an amazing person. And kind of in many ways, turn your back on the people that brought you up that ladder or helped you up or saw you for your talent. Discretion is really key, because as soon as with this energy, with Mars in detriment and also Venus there, what happens is if you in fact start talking about this person, or maybe it's true, maybe it's things that they've done that have not been in integrity, or they're not an amazing individual or something like that, and you take an opportunity to say, well, they're not very good, or they did this or whatever. This can potentially, with these energies in this line and this right now, can definitely have a blowback effect. So in other words, if you talk about this, then it might come back to haunt you. There always will be other opportunities for this energy to get out into the world. And usually when somebody has a bad reputation, it eventually shows in the real world. It all comes to the forefront. But right now, specifically based on the transits, is not the time to call someone out, because if you do, there is potential that there will be blowback. So that's something to keep in mind. Mars and Venus will also meet in the gate 54, line 4, on the 18th of February. This is a very mystical line, and it's also a time where we might see some synchronicities in the world and some things that will kind of shock us or surprise us, or it might be an opportunity where we can open up about the mystical experiences that we've had in our life and be okay with telling others and not feel like there's something wrong with us because we've had these magical or mystical in experiences in our life. Because this is where we, in this particular line, the magic and the mundane kind of mingle, and we understand that in this world that we live in, there is a little bit of everything. And one more thing to talk about is that we have Mercury going into the gate 60, line 6, where it is in detriment. And this is talking about this idea that you are pushing so hard to maintain some kind of a limitation on your life that it's almost oppressive to the point where it makes you not feel very happy anymore. In fact, you feel like you're always oppressed and you're not having any good times in life, but it's a self-imposed limitation instead of something that's real. Now, if we play in with Pluto moving into the second line, where we have this concept that we are still playing with the same rules even though they've changed. So in other words, not seeing that the limitations that you were under are being released. In fact, you're so bent on how it's always been, you can't see how it is changing and how it is evolving. So this is about looking at the new opportunities that might be opening up, but being so hooked into this concept of it is always going to be the same and it's not changing. In other words, like you're a bird in a cage, the cage door is open and yet you're not flying out because you still think that you're caged in. So this is about looking at your world and seeing that there is new opportunity and potentially new doors being opened. And when you see them, then you can walk through them. But if you're always in the same mindset that it's always going to be the same, it's never going to change. And sometimes getting into this concept of being so oppressed and feeling down about it that you can't see that the sun is coming out again and that the rain is cleared, and you're continue to think that it's still raining out because you're too connected to this idea of it will always rain and I'm never going to get out. So now this is where I've talked about this before, where I feel like there's an opening. This is like the first open door that's happening now, or happened on the February 13th. And then the next one that's coming up is when we have Neptune moving into the gate 36, and that'll happen on March 7th. So these are opening doors that I feel like are starting to bring the end of all the limitations and the pandemic constrictions that we've had, and we're starting to be able to walk in to new opportunities, have more doors open in our lives, but we have to be open to seeing new things as opposed to always imagining that it is what it was, instead of seeing that it is changing and evolving, and mutation is potentially happening in our lives. And the last thing I wanted to mention was, much like that happened on February 1st, we do have an emotional channel that's going to get all hooked up for about 2 days. This is the 3041, and it's going to bring more of this emotional energy and a more passionate concept to the whole idea of, what do I want for my future? Where am I going? What do I hold on to? What do I let go of? What is a dream? And what is reality? And also, am I a visionary or am I a dreamer? But this is also a lot of passion to do the things you want to do, to enjoy the experiences that you can in your life, and to live life in an experiential way, in that you are completely being involved in a fantasy and enjoying that fantasy. Especially like if you go and see a movie or something, you might be even more engaged with what the movie is telling you, the story that it's telling you. And with Saturn moving into the 13 line 5, it's important to remember that there might be some people out in the world that might look like a savior to you, or we might look at somebody as a savior, but that can be the energy that is potentially a projection of what we want, and it may not be as true as we think it is. Or we might even see people who we thought were saviors kind of falling from grace. So that is all for this full moon. I hope you have an amazing full moon, and it is filled with lots of passion for what you want to do in your life. And if you want to have a daily update of what's happening in the skies, please check out my community page. I do a post every day that will update you on the current transits. And I also talk a little bit about human design and different techniques that I find helpful. So with that said, take care, and I'll see you again soon. Bye for now.